Hello there, everyone. And I mean everyone. Every single person on earth had to deal with this pandemic for the last few years. Yeah, almost 3 years now. And still to this day, there are people who are worried and wearing masks and scared of what may or may not happen to them. I totally understand the fear that was induced during this time. And as reluctant as I am to even talk about it, it's very important for me to cover this topic because I've had to bite my tongue a lot on YouTube because a few videos I made were declared medical misinformation and I got channel strikes and almost had my channel shut down. The most recent one I was able to dispute, and they've reinstated my video, fortunately. Thank you, YouTube. It's not all bad. Because all I said basically was how ridiculous it is that people appear to be wearing 10 masks while they're hiking on a trail in the middle of nowhere. And how much fear was brought forth and propagated by this pandemic issue. So, I suppose by talking about this video may or may not be demonetized, but I need to make the disclaimer. Nothing in this video, in any way, shape, or form, is intended to be medical information or, let's say, as they would put on a pill bottle. Nothing is diagnosed to help prevent or cure any disease. All right? With that disclaimer out of the way, what the question I'm really asking here is, are there any people out there whatsoever, and I mean in any country, in any circumstance, is there anyone out there who can honestly leave a comment on this video saying that they fully support every measure that the government, let's say in the United States where I live, implemented all the measures appropriately to deal with this supposed threat? And what I mean by that is, do you believe that there's nothing else we could have done differently and that the best thing we could have done was to lock down? I remember talking about this back in 2020. I made a video around February or so, maybe January, February of 2020, saying that I'd been looking into this virus that was coming from Wuhan, and the way that they were dealing with it made me a little reluctant to not prepare. So I went out and I actually bought the things that they claimed were selling out there, right? I bought into the bullshit, bought the hand sanitizer, even went out and got the toilet paper long before the run on toilet paper. Said, not just that, we went to Costco and we stocked up on everything, right? Everything we could. Food. I was like, look, if we need to stay at home for 2 weeks and this thing is really as dangerous as they say, even like a 10% rate, oh my God, that'd be horrible. Let's lock down, do what we have to do. I was working from home, so it was fine. But my wife, her restaurant had to shut down. After a while, this 2 weeks turned into a month, and then a month, and then another month, and 6 months. Basically, I believe that the way the government handled this was so absurd that it can only lead any rational person who has analyzed this and looked at the data. At this point, if you've actually looked into it, because I'm reluctant to make claims without data, and back then we had no data, but now that we do, we can confirm that people overreacted, the government overreacted, that lockdowns were not effective. In fact, several studies that were done on lockdown versus no lockdown, in Sweden there was no lockdown, and they had lower rates of death, actually. And there were plenty of people screaming that going outside in the sun, something as simple as mental activities with friends and visiting with people and not stressing and going out in the sunlight and going hiking and getting fresh air, people were saying, hey, these things are good for you. And governments were actually saying, no, you cannot go to the beach. You cannot go hiking. Right after the lockdowns, right when they started rather, my wife and I took the kids once her work shut down. She said, well, let's just go camping. We have a school bus. So we loaded up all our stuff and we drove up to Mount St. Helens, camped right there at the overlook. Didn't see anybody. Went down and hiked the trail. It was like the most peaceful and private time because everyone was so scared they were actually locked indoors in their homes. And I, even then, didn't understand that. It made no sense to me. I was like, I've studied how viruses work. They don't generally transmit outdoors. They transmit in closed spaces. That's the whole point of why cities have more issues. And I had a lot of time to process this, and process this, and process this, just like you all did. I have videos and photos of the playground at my child's school and the playground next door that had literal caution tape wrapped around all the bars and the chains, and then the actual swings put up and locked up to the top. These bastards were locking up playgrounds. So I thought, okay, lockdowns. The evidence shows that they had little to no effect whatsoever. The best research that supported lockdowns said that it may have helped with a 0.7% decrease in cases. Think about this. That's not deaths. That's a 0.7 decrease in cases. I was just appalled at how this was handled from the beginning. And today, looking back on it, I'm amazed that people are still defending the position that all we needed were shots and everything would be just fine. When they gave you the first one and said it might not work, you need another one, you'll need a second shot, and then told you that you're going to need booster and then another booster, there were still people who were just lining up. They believed the authorities that were telling them what they thought they needed to know. And I can't blame people for that. I can't fault people for wanting to rely on authority. I mean, what? You either listen to your health professionals and your officials, or you listen to some douchebag on YouTube screaming about 5G and radiation and how it, the conspiracy theorists did nothing to help this at all. They made it worse by bringing in a bunch of irrelevant bullshit to it. They wanted to talk about depopulation and everything, go into the stories about how they're trying to mutate our genetics so they can control us. And all of that drowned out the real fears that were coming from legitimate doctors and scientists about the danger of thinking that you can abate something by giving what wouldn't even be considered a vaccine because it wasn't effective as a vaccine. It only, quote, reduced symptoms. And if you look at the evidence for that, it's lacking today. If you look at the evidence for the boosters being beneficial, there isn't any. If you look for evidence that lockdowns helped, there isn't any. And if you look for any evidence whatsoever that these other, quote, substitute substances that people were using, that were being harassed and berated, that if you look into them, you'll find out that for some people they were effective. And I recall this, regardless of what we may want to believe, I do not recall at any one time the CDC or the FDA or any government agency putting out a public announcement that said, you should get out and get more sun. You should take vitamin D supplements if you can't. That vitamin D has been known to help our immune system. That taking zinc and even some vitamin C or reishi mushrooms or chaga could actually possibly potentially benefit. And there are articles, scientific articles in PubMed and various publications from medical journals that have done studies on this and confirmed the immuno-beneficial, properties of many of these things. Nothing was talked about. In fact, the only solution beyond taking the shot was Paxlovid, which is this new drug coming out from, guess who? Oh wait, which one is it? I don't even remember anymore. Basically, there are several pharmaceutical companies out there who are competing for your dollar. And I'm not the kind of person who thinks that it's completely useless or that no person's going to benefit from these medical procedures, but taking a shot that's only been tested in 8 mice, the 8 mice meme, I won't go there, but I have to be careful about what I say because I'm not trying to promote any type of, mindset. I'm just saying people need to really question authority a lot more. And I was pretty disappointed in how ignorant the public has become and how afraid people are to really look at the truth. Millions of people lost jobs. Thousands, probably tens of thousands of businesses had to shut down. You can't have a small business that survives a 6-month lockdown because you're afraid that some customers might get sick, even when it's their fucking choice as individuals to come in there or not. People were coddled and treated like babies by Big Brother. And instead of standing up and doing anything about it, they just tolerated it. So, those are my thoughts on what happened over the last few years. I should say that's probably 1/10 of the thoughts I really have. I may do a future video on this, and I would upload it on probably Odyssey or something, which I'm reluctant to use, but it's the only way that I could really say how I truly feel about how bad people are being screwed. And the worst part of it is how much of the data is being scrubbed and blacked out, basically ignored, about the dangers of some of these medical procedures. And it's all about money, baby. It always has been. And there's really very little argument against that I can find that's legitimate. People want to make money, and something this big is bound to make a lot of money, and it has. Unfortunately, just not for the people who actually make the world go round. The blue-collar workers like you and me. Peace out, and I'll talk to you later.